Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be showing you how I would typically paint this. Now as you see over here, I have already started and I had already uploaded a video of how I have done this particular piece. And the only thing that I have actually done here so far is basically paint a very it's just a single coat of black acrylic paint that I have done here, and what I have in hand is a silver color paint, and this basically is what I'm going to be doing in order to get an effect like this. You can choose to either use your hands, but if you are allergic and if you're not comfortable using, you can try and use this kind of a sponge in order to basically create this kind of an effect. The idea is not to basically make the whole bead silver. The idea is that let there be slight hints of black. Let it not be perfect. That's what I'm trying to say here. So because what happens is there is, when it actually comes together, there is something nice about the imperfections in the color when they all come together. We'll just see how that happens. I will also basically assemble this set and I will show it to you. So let's begin. I'm more comfortable using my hand, but like I said, feel free to use the sponge. And if you're not comfortable doing this, just try transferring a little bit of paint onto the palette and probably work that way. So what I'm doing here is, this is a square bead. I had uploaded this video just recently, and I have dry paint. Like you see, I'm just rotating this bead very randomly in between these fingers, and it's like wherever the paint catches on, that's all. And I would just leave it at that. That's it. That's as simple as that. And I would do that to all the other beads. Like I said, the idea is not to be all, not to aim for it to look completely painted in silver or too perfect. The imperfections make it look nice. It would make it look, it'll probably help in giving that bit of an antique-y kind of a look. Now let's just see how we can do the pendant. This is the pendant, and like you see, I've just painted it black all over, and it's got some really simple carvings on it. So this comes to light with this. This is a beautiful way to highlight, just simple, really simple and basic carvings. Always, at least clean your hands in between, just so that, you don't lay on dried bits of paint. And I must tell you that this is undiluted paint. It's just going directly from the from the tube to the piece. Like I said, don't look at covering the entire piece. Let there be imperfections. It just helps it look like a metal. And there, it's as simple as that, just as simple as that. And when it comes together, it looks pretty very nice actually. And especially the carvings in this manner, just they look so much more clear and so much more better now, don't they? It looks like a piece of metal. And if you remember, these were the earrings that we had made, just two simple round, two basically really simple small such circles. We'll paint them in the same way. Just roughly. Now that all of these beads are actually painted the way I want it to be, let's begin varnishing this. Now this is something that I think a lot of you have been asking me about, about how how to varnish. And typically my suggestion, now I don't varnish that much, but that's especially because of the reason that I really don't like the fumes that that varnish generally kind of gives out. It's a strong odor, and just the idea that you put it onto jewelry that you would wear so close to your skin. I was somehow a little uncomfortable with that. But I recently started using this. I find this quite nice. Doesn't have any strong odors, and the fact that it's water based makes it that much more easier. And this one, dries pretty quickly. So I actually picked up this product here, here in the US. I find this quite useful, quite nice, and really quick drying. And the cleanup is pretty easy. It's just water and soap. I just use a soft brush to spread on the varnish, and I just probably take a little bit. It looks like this, probably a little bit like diluted, maybe Fevicol or something. But when it dries absolutely clear, and it dries very fast. And the cleanup, like I said, is just water and soap, and you're good to go. So let's just see how I would typically do this. Now, if you see why I have actually put this on is because these are the varnished ones. I've already given like 2 coats of varnish on these, and I've just put it on these just so that they kind of dry. I do not like varnishing after it's assembled. I prefer doing it before, just so that I have all the beads, everything dried and just nice and non-sticky. Once you cord it, once you assemble it and then varnish it, there is a good chance that maybe like beads might just stick to each other, and then when you try pulling it apart, there'll be a little bit of paint that can just come off. So to avoid all of that, my suggestion would be to actually varnish individually. I know it's probably a lot of work, but if you're using a quick drying varnish like this, I think it's pretty easy. This is just some sort of a wire that I use. I just put the bead over here, and I just use a soft brush like this. That's all, and I just basically spread it on. And this just takes like a couple of minutes to like dry, and it's as easy as that. Once that dries, also just remember that this is completely dry. The paint is completely dried, and only then apply the varnish so that you don't have any paint coming off on your on your brush. Or just make sure that you actually space. You can use any kind of a spacer, a plastic spacer or something, or you can just basically leave it at a certain distance. But like I said, this one dries pretty quickly, and the residue that comes on your hands, you can just wash it off with water and soap, and it comes off pretty easily. So I would just leave that. In fact, this one is almost drying, So I would typically go through about 2 coats, and I think 2 coats is more than enough for for jewelry. It's pretty good. So you can just continue to do this to all of the beads, and even to a pendant. Basically, you see that this is completely dry. Don't worry about it looking translucent now. It'll probably look a little bit translucent like this, but on drying it dries absolutely clear. And that's that, and it's got no it's a non-yellowing product, so it just dries really clear, and it's quite nice. I like it. There's absolutely no odor, and that's like the biggest advantage for me. So in a pendant, typically what I would do is I would varnish one side. I would let that dry, and only after it dries do I actually go on to varnish the back part of it as well. I would not just do the front, or I would not do a partial varnish at all. If I'm doing it, I would go all the way. That's again a choice that I would leave to you, to each of you basically. So this is a round bead again, so this can go back on this. So this is typically how you can actually use a varnish, and just use it after your products, after your paint basically is like completely dried. So to be on the safer side, you can, like, do the varnish maybe the next day, if if you're uncertain about the paint not drying too well. Now, as you see, I have already basically, completed the painting. I've also done another one using the same method, in a shade of gold. As you see, this is also basically varnished, and it's already dry. And like I said, I've put about 2 coats, and again, let me repeat that this was basically the varnish that I had used. And these are, I found this extremely easy to clean as well. I mean, I used the brush, and then I just had to like wash it with soap and water, and it was absolutely fine. Now let's get on to assembling this. Now I have everything ready here, and let's just see how we can actually put all of it together. So I have like these two cords here. This is a nylon cord, pretty strong. And somebody had asked me what is the length of the cord that I use. So roughly this is basically, both of these are really short necklaces or neck pieces or whatever you want to call it. And for something like this, I would typically not use anything more than about 40 inches. I might even cut off if I feel, cut off the excess if I feel it's too long. If there is too much that's hanging at the back, I might just cut it off. So yeah, I mean, I typically would use, so this one's roughly about 42, yeah, it's about 42 inches in length per cord. So that's what I would prefer using, because if it's long, it's okay, but if it's short, then you might have to just remove the whole thing and then start back. So let's begin with this. So I've already uploaded a couple of assembling videos, so this should be relatively easy, and but this would also give you a nice idea of how these square beads actually look. And also, if you see, this is not a very high gloss varnish, but it does a pretty decent job. It's much easier to assemble after it is all varnished. So another tip while assembling is, if you want to, you can just put a little bit of Fevicol at the tip and just put it all together. And like I already said, that these were intended to be short chains. So this is the length, and what I've done is I have basically locked it by just putting 2 knots at either side, I mean at the ends of this, just so that the beads don't kind of shake and move. So obviously now the part of putting the the bead at the end, and then completing the whole piece. So let's get to that. And I have like a couple of wooden beads over here, so let's begin doing this. I have more such videos basically that I have uploaded in the past, where I have shown the complete assembling. And I think I've always mentioned this, that this can be a little bit tricky. It's not as straightforward as it seems. Requires a little bit of strength, a little bit of practice, and but you'll get there. And this happens to be one of the most safest methods of actually assembling jewelry, because terracotta can be a little bit heavy. So not all the time does, for me, sometimes when I use a gear wire, I'm a little worried when I have too much weight put on a gear wire, say when compared to this, because this is like super strong. And there's just one complete cord in the whole, there's just one complete piece used in the whole thing. It's not cut anywhere, it's not, there's no separation anywhere in between. So let's begin. So this is the part which can be a little bit more tricky at the beginning. Now comes my plier. I would hold the plier this way and try to rotate and push the bead in remember that the bead shouldn't ideally go in very easily, because what would eventually happen is, if the bead is too loose, then this would not, you would not be able to hold the necklace in place. That's ideally what would go wrong, basically. So it has to be, firm, and it shouldn't be so tight that you're not able to even, move it around. So yeah, you just have to find the midway. And so you see that, as I turn slowly, a little bit is actually coming out, and we can just is out there here. So we can just, once there's a decent amount of length that's there, just use this and pull it out. This is pretty firm, like you see. I'm able to actually move it, yet I'm able to hold on. Like for example, when I hold this piece, it's not that it's just moving up and down. It's certainly not like that. It's pretty firm, quite nice. I'm happy with the way it is. If you think some of these beads are, if it's not strong enough, try to maybe add an additional bead. That's why I always tend to keep a little extras, just in case, because if there are two, just in case one is loose, at least the person wearing it can actually use the second bead and adjust the length. And once something like that is done, I do think the length of the cord is maybe a bit too much, because it's a closed neck piece. So I might actually snip off a little bit towards the end. But before that, I would just knot it like that. It's a simple knot. I might get it a little closer so that I can cut off this portion. Yep, I think that's a decent length. Just make sure this is nice and tight. That off. You can use a needle or any kind of a plier or anything to just open this up. Super simple way to assemble, just that, yeah, the bead part can be a little tricky. So this is one. Let's get on to the next one. Now that these are put together, I've already done this for both of them. Let's actually wrap it up by fixing the post to the stud. So as you see, these are also varnished. It's got a nice kind of a glossy look to it. Not a very high gloss though, but just a bit. And I have my glue here. I have my glue over here, and so there are two ways. Either you can basically put it directly over here, or you can put it on this one. Typically I might just put a good quantity on this. So I'm using the silver one for the silver and the gold one for the antique gold. So typically do this and give it a nice firm press. Okay. So that's it. This is pretty much it. I really hope you found this video useful, everyone. I have tried to actually put together the whole thing, and I think with regard to the studs, I would let this dry easily for at least 24 hours. In fact, sometimes I would just let it dry for a couple of days, at least 2-3 days sometimes, because it can tend to get a little sticky, and it has to really firm up, because you don't want these stud posts to come into your hand. That can just be embarrassing. So this is it. I really hope you found this video useful, everyone. If you liked the video, then please hit the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching.